Hello everybody, SlimKirby here. I am getting ready for my Mario Party 10 road trip. I have everything I need. I have my wallet, I have my ID, I have my 3DS for street passing, I have my driving amiibo. I am good to go. So you know what? Let's go ahead and get this party started. This is clearly not my driving music.
After Mario Party 8, Hudson Soft stopped working on the console Mario Party games. Why? I'd like to think that it was because something like this happened. In reality, I think it's because they were downsized, certain departments were eliminated, and the company was later completely bought out by Konami. After these events, it was feared that Mario Party would no longer be continuing, until E3 2011 when footage of a new game was being shown for Mario Party 9. This footage was somewhat controversial though, when it showed all of the characters moving around at once in a single vehicle. These fears were unfortunately confirmed when the game came out as Mario Party 9, and it would be one of the biggest ventures away from the classic style of Mario Party, at least as far as the console games are concerned. There were still mini-games, and the goal of the game was to collect the most stars in a single game, but the stars were treated more like coins were in older games. The final results were also no longer decided by the number of turns that pass, but when the entire group made it to the end of the board, meaning every single board was just one linear path to the end of the game with only one lap. Okay, so it's definitely different than what we're used to, but I was more than willing to give Mario Party 9 a chance. And at the end of the day, while I do prefer Mario Party Classic, I do give props to Mario Party 9 for trying something new, as the game is far from terrible. It's just different. Very, very different. I'll get into my major problem with the game in tomorrow's video, as it'll be more relevant there than it will today's batch of videos, because as usual, we are starting with the minigames. Although minigames were no longer held at the end of every single turn, but this time you had to land on a space that activates them. That doesn't make them any less important, though. Winning minigames will definitely put you at a rather large advantage and can help bridge the gap if a player gets too far ahead in the standings. This is especially true with boss minigames, games that take place halfway during the course of the board and at the very end. Basically a game where you fight one of Bowser's goons, and a game that can yield quite a few mini-stars if you perform well. But as usual, there are shares of good minigames and shares of bad minigames, and I'm here once again to point out my favorites and least favorites. Let's start with the worst list. Number 10, Chain Events. Here we have the sequel to Mario Party 8's worst minigame, Flip the Chimp, in the form of chain events. In this game, you are sliding down a chain trying to reach the very bottom. Along the way, you must dodge spike balls that will impede your progress and slow you down. Your job is to navigate around the spike balls by flicking the Wiimote in the opposite direction of the spike balls to avoid them, and be the first player to the very bottom. I will give credit where it is due. This is miles better than Flip the Chimp, and with Bowser's reverse minigame event, where your goal is to fail at the minigame horrendously, this game is one of the better candidates to get. However, the movement in between flicking animations is still a bit too slow for my liking and still a bit of a problem as a result, and it can lead to somewhat frustrating experiences as you start your descent in this minigame. Number 9, Pizza Me Mario. The last pizza minigame Mario Party gave us was amazing, but the second one, not so much. I suppose it's because in this case we are making the pizza, not eating it, and the process of making the pizza has some pretty harsh timing as a result. In this game, each player has one topping, and they must individually put their topping on each slice of pizza as it spins on the table. If your topping lands on a slice that is already decorated with your topping, it will bounce off and you have to try again. As I said before, really the only problem I had with this game was the timing aspect, as you have to get it just right in order for it to work in your favor. Like Chain Event, that's pretty much the only thing I find wrong with it. Number 8, Speeding Bullets. You know those Sonic Mach Speed sections in Sonic 06, Sonic Unleashed, and Sonic Generations? That's pretty much what you get in this game as you pilot a speeding vehicle and try to reach the very end of the course before your opponents, while dodging obstacles and walls that impede your progress and making the most of any boost panels in your path. Once again, motion timing seems to be the issue here, as you will often find yourself trying to avoid a quickly approaching wall or obstacle. And because of how fast your machine moves, dodging anything in front of you almost seems near impossible because by the time you see it, you are already making out with it. Turning isn't your vehicle's strong suit, so a lot of this minigame comes down to course memorization, which in my opinion is not really what you want to do for a minigame like this. Number 7. Smash Compactor. You know, Mario and his friends have been through a lot in this sub-series, but I think the most gruesome abuse they've taken in the entire Mario Party series is probably being flattened, and I think this game is the perfect example of it. Mario and friends are, quite literally, in a giant smashing compactor with very few safe zones available to them. Every few seconds before the compactor comes down, some holes will open up and you and the other players must race to the holes before the entire thing comes crashing down and smashes you into the thinnest pancake imaginable. Unlike Brooksquirm in Mario Party 4, if you are a bit slow on the uptake, you can use your Fists of Fury to knock your opponents out of the way and give you more of a chance to survive. However, I feel like that actually is what makes this game worse than Brooksquirm. Sometimes the most random punch at the most inopportune time can knock you out of the running, and there is such a small window of time to work with already. It's kind of one of those games where it's just over way too quickly, but at the same time can have too large of an impact on your results. Number 6. Bowser's Block Battle. At the end of the day, the boss battles in this game can really end up being the deciding factor of whether or not you win the game. So when you have a minigame that is luck-based, or even partly luck-based, it can be a bit of a bummer to play, especially after spending an entire game trying to stay in the running. While Bowser's Block Battle is far from the worst, or even the most luck-based battle game, it does kind of take away from what would have been a pretty awesome game in retrospect. You start the game by rolling huge dice blocks that have all of the characters' faces on them, as well as Bowser's face. At the end of the phase, each player will get points based on how many dice blocks have their face on it, and will do that amount of damage to Bowser as well. If it lands on Bowser's face, Bowser will use one of his attacks, and whoever gets hit by the attack will lose some points in the process. The game continues on until Bowser has 0 health remaining, and whoever deals the final blow will get a few extra points as well. Now, while the game itself is not completely luck-based, the dice blocks do kind of have a mind of their own and will bounce around quite a bit, making it hard to get the die to land on your face in the process. On a lucky day, you could end up getting 6 hits on Bowser, while other times you may only end up getting 1 or none at all. That's really my only problem with this game. For a game that means a whole lot in the grand scheme of things, there are just too many luck-based elements for my liking. And if they're not luck-based, just kind of annoying elements.
On the road again, just can't wait to get on the road again. Something, making music with my friends. I just can't wait to get on the road again. Woohoo! Yeah! Willie Nelson, everybody.
Number 5. Bumper Bubbles. This game would have not been on this list at all if it wasn't for one extremely annoying factor. In this game, you are in a bubble, and you are trying to collect a bunch of balloons that are flying in the sky while avoiding spike balls in the process. Here's the problem. When you get hit by a spike ball, you will lose every single balloon you have in your possession. So let me run this scenario by you. You have almost 40 balloons at the last 5 seconds of the game. A spike ball comes out of nowhere, you try to escape, the other players push you into the opposite direction, you hit the spike ball, lose every single one of your balloons, and the game ends with you being in 4th place, despite the fact that you were winning for the entire time up until those last few seconds. Pardon my language, but that is such dickery. At least the blue shell in Mario Kart could only be that effective if it randomly got timed perfectly with at least 6 other items. This is just garbage. Complete garbage. If it wasn't for that fact, this could actually be a really fun minigame otherwise. But I cannot forgive such an oversight. Number 4. Pit or Platter. I said it before in Mario Party 8, but balancing is what I fear most when it comes to the Wiimote motion controls, and Pit or Platter is a perfect example of why. In this game, you must balance a small ball on a plate while trying to have the ball roll over the smashed flashing areas on the plate to get points. The longer you keep your ball on the plate without dropping, the more points you'll get in an exponential combo. So in other words, if you are ridiculously good at balancing, prepare to have a high score amongst the likes you have never seen before. If you aren't, Prepare to see anything higher than single digits as your prayers finally being answered by your Lord and Savior. Seriously, one-sided games like this are complete BS, especially when motion controls are involved. Number 3, Peer Pressure, 10 to Win, and Mecha Choice. It's time, guys, for that block you've all been expecting, the luck-based block. And let me say right now, get ready for the massive, massive, massive ties. First up, we have the luck-based normal minigames. As usual, they're minigames with luck-based elements, so there are times where your fate could be decided by just a single button press. Peer Pressure is a game where your fate is determined by whether or not you hook a Cheep Cheep or an urchin on your fishing pole. If you hook an urchin, you're out of the game. If you hook a Cheep Cheep, you're still in. 10 to Win is a card game where different point effects are placed on certain cards, and whoever reaches 10 points first will be the winner. And Mecha Choice is a game where you try to choose doors that won't lead to your doom. As far as luck-based games go, these are not the worst that this game has to offer. At least they aren't boss minigames or wagered minigames, so if you don't necessarily come out on top, you won't be as screwed over as other instances. And I feel like even though they are of the luck-based variety, there are still some elements that don't make them seem completely luck-based. For example, you may be able to keep track of some of the cards in 10 to Win, and I feel like the reactions of the fishing lines and Peer Pressure do have some kind of tell to what you will hook. But at the end of the day, they are still not games I would want to get on a regular basis, as they can completely screw you over at certain intervals, and that is just not okay to me. Number 2, Whomp Stomp and Bombard King Bob-omb. This was probably no surprise after I highlighted the fact that at least the last tie weren't boss minigames. Sure enough, we have some boss minigames right here, and sure enough, they have some luck-based elements to them. They both also happen to take place in the Bob-omb Factory story mode map too, if that says anything about how I feel about that board already. But I'll get into that tomorrow. Like most boss minigames, the goal is to try and eliminate the bosses and get points while doing so. In Whomp Stomp, you rotate a platform around to get the Whomp King to descend and smash one of the other players, while the other team members take turn doing ground pounds on the Whomp to deplete his health and get points. During this time, not only will the smash player be unable to do anything, but they will also lose points in the process as well. So one player can be completely screwed over if they land under the Whomp's stone body, even for just one session. As for King Bob-omb, you select Bob-ombs that are available to you and toss them at the Bomb King himself. However, if more than one player chooses the same bomb, they will not get any points whatsoever and will potentially get hurt in the process as well. Again, these games aren't completely luck-based. In fact, there is a bit of strategy to them as well, but in terms of boss minigames, a game that should just focus on doing as much damage as possible, these games are just too much of a letdown for me. Number 1, Bowser Jr. Breakdown. Okay, so the Bowser boss battle was kind of meh, and there were 2 other boss battles that weren't exactly stellar either. The worst boss minigame though, and perhaps the worst game in Mario Party 9, is perhaps the most luck-based game in the entire set. This honor belongs to the Bowser Jr. boss battle titled Bowser Jr. Breakdown. In this game, Bowser Jr. has a number line, and each player rolls a dice that will increase the marker on the line. For every multiple of 3, you will do that amount of damage to Bowser Jr. Unfortunately, the player that lands on that number will be the one doing all the damage, so it's kind of a winner-takes-all type of scenario. If you land on a Bowser Jr. space, he will personally roll a dice block himself and do that amount of damage to you instead, decreasing the number of points you have. So quite literally, the results of this game will depend on a dice block, and that is just extremely problematic for me. What makes this game even worse is the fact that this game can absolutely take forever to get through. Bowser's minigame can be long too, but in that case it makes sense because it's the king himself. Not to give Bowser Jr. too less of credit or anything, but for being a mid-boss of Bowser's board, this game just drags and is a huge pace breaker. Not to mention that because it's a boss minigame, the fact that it can impact the game greatly on the basis of being a luck-based minigame, just not a great combination at all for me. So now that we've gotten the worst out of the way, it's time to move on to some greener pastures with the best minigames list. Stay tuned for my video on that. Later, folks.